Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working the closing shift at the coffee shop for about 6 months, and honestly, I'd gotten used to the usual rush of last-minute customers. Most people were pretty understanding when they came in near closing time. They'd order something simple, grab their drink, and go. But that night was different. Everything had gone smoothly. My coworker had already started cleaning the espresso machine, and I was wiping down the counters when the door chimed. I looked up at the clock. 9:50. We closed at 10. The woman who walked in looked to be in her late 40s, dressed in expensive-looking athleisure wear with a yoga mat bag slung over her shoulder. She walked up to the counter with this air of, I don't know how to describe it, like she owned the place. She pulled out her phone and started reading off her order without even looking at me. She rattled off this super complicated drink order: half-calf latte with oat milk, extra hot, 2 pumps of vanilla, 1 pump of hazelnut, and light foam. Then she said she wanted it in a real mug, not a paper cup. I wrote it all down on the cup, double-checking each specification. I told her the total came to $6.45. She paid with her card, then immediately walked over to one of the armchairs and started scrolling through her phone. I got to work on her drink, making sure everything was exactly right. Half-calf meant splitting the espresso shots between regular and decaf. I measured out the syrups carefully, steamed the oat milk to the extra hot temperature, and made sure the foam was lighter than usual. The steam was rising off the drink when I poured it into the ceramic mug. I called out that her half-calf oat milk latte was ready. She came over, picked up the mug, and took a single sip. Her face immediately twisted into this expression of disgust, like I'd just served her something rotten. She said the drink was wrong. I apologized and asked what was wrong with it. She insisted it wasn't hot enough, saying she had specifically ordered it extra hot. I could see steam coming off the drink. The mug itself was hot to the touch when I'd set it on the counter. I explained that I had made it extra hot and offered to remake it for her if she wanted. She set the mug down hard enough that some of the coffee sloshed over the side. She complained that she didn't have time now because she had to get to her yoga class. I grabbed a towel to wipe up the spill. I apologized again and wished her a good night. I turned to toss the towel in the hamper, but when I looked back, she was still standing there, just staring at me. Not saying anything, just staring. It was unsettling. After what felt like forever, she finally spoke. She asked if I was going to offer her a refund or a free drink card. I explained our policy. We could remake any drink if there was an issue, but we couldn't offer refunds if the drink was made to the specifications ordered. She demanded to speak to my manager. I held back a sigh and went to the back room, where my manager was checking inventory. She was 23, had been with the company for 2 years, and was honestly one of the best managers I'd ever worked for. She handled difficult customers with this confidence that I envied. I told her there was a customer who wanted to speak with her about our refund policy. My manager followed me back to the front. The woman was now leaning against the counter, arms crossed, tapping her foot. My manager greeted her and said she understood there was an issue with the drink. The woman complained that I had made her drink wrong and was now refusing to give her a refund. My manager explained she was happy to remake the drink, but our policy was that we didn't provide refunds for drinks that were made according to the order specifications. The woman scoffed and said this was ridiculous. She claimed she spent $6 there almost every day and questioned if this was how we treated loyal customers. My manager tilted her head slightly, and I could see this little flicker of recognition cross her face. She mentioned that she'd been working there for 2 years and worked most evenings. She said she didn't believe she'd ever seen the woman in there before. The woman's face went red, like actually red. She stammered that was because she usually went to the location on 5th Street. My manager suggested she speak with their management about their policies, but explained that our policy there was the same company-wide. She repeated that we were happy to remake drinks, but didn't offer refunds when drinks were made correctly. The woman called us unbelievable and said she was reporting this. She grabbed her yoga mat bag and stormed out, leaving the barely touched latte sitting on the counter. The door slammed hard enough that the little bell made this jangling noise that seemed to go on forever. My manager and I exchanged a look. She just shook her head and went back to checking inventory. I poured out the latte and finished closing up. The next morning, my manager sent me a screenshot. The woman had left a 1-star review on every platform she could find. The review said we were hostile to middle-aged women and that we desperately needed customer service training. She claimed she'd been coming to our location for years and had never been treated so poorly. My manager responded professionally, stating the facts of what happened and reiterating the company's remake policy. But I just felt exhausted reading it. 6 months of closing shifts, and I dealt with plenty of difficult customers. But something about this one stuck with me. The entitlement, the lying, the expectation that making a scene would get her what she wanted. I showed up for my next shift and kept doing my job. I've been living on the main floor of my parents' house for the past 4 years, sharing the space with them while my sister lives on the second floor and my niece has the entire top apartment to herself. That top floor was supposed to be mine. When my parents decided to remodel it, I was the one who helped them pick out fixtures, paint colors, flooring, all of it. We spent weeks planning how to set it up so I could have my own space while still being close enough to help them out as they got older. That was the whole point. They needed someone nearby, and I needed some independence. It seemed like the perfect solution. Then the renovations finished, and my niece asked if she could stay there for a little while. She'd just broken up with someone and needed a temporary place to crash. My parents said yes without really discussing it with me, and I didn't push back because I didn't want to cause problems. I figured it would be a few months, maybe half a year at most. That was 4 years ago. I tried not to let it bother me at first. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that she'd find her own place soon and I'd finally get the apartment that was supposed to be mine from the start. But months turned into years, and nothing changed. Meanwhile, I'm the one who's here every single day helping my parents with everything they need. Grocery runs, doctor's appointments, fixing things around the house, managing bills, you name it. My mom's been having trouble with her mobility lately, and my dad forgets things more often than he used to. They need help, real help, and I'm happy to give it. But I'm doing all of this while crammed into a shared living space with zero privacy. My niece makes decent money at her job. She could absolutely afford to rent her own place nearby if she wanted to. I can't right now because most of my time and energy goes into taking care of my parents and the house. The irony isn't lost on me. Things got worse recently when she started dating an old friend of mine. I say old friend because we're not close anymore, and there are good reasons for that. Our friendship ended badly, and I have no interest in having him back in my life in any capacity. One evening, my niece brought him over without any kind of heads up. I walked into the living room, and there he was, sitting on the couch like nothing had ever happened between us. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't make a scene right then, but I was furious. This is my home too. I live here. And she just brought someone I actively avoid into my space without even a text to let me know. It's not like this was the first time something like this had happened either. She dated my best friend a while back, and when that relationship imploded, I lost that friendship completely. Got caught in the middle of their mess and somehow ended up being the bad guy. My sister, her mom, has been having some kind of secret affair with my other best friend's married father. That whole situation is a ticking time bomb, and when I said I wasn't okay with being dragged into it, everyone acted like I was the problem. I was tired of it, tired of biting my tongue, tired of making myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. So I texted my niece and told her I needed the apartment. I explained that I wasn't trying to throw her out on the street or give her some impossible deadline. I just said it was time to start planning because I'd waited long enough. I also asked her to please give me a heads up if she was going to bring that guy over again. I thought I was being reasonable. Instead of talking to me about it, she went straight to her mom. My sister went to my mom, and the next morning I woke up to both my parents already upset with me. My dad didn't even ask for my side of things. He just told me I couldn't tell her to move out, and he wouldn't either. That was it. Discussion over. My mom told me I was being selfish and starting unnecessary drama. My sister called me entitled. My niece won't even look at me now. And I'm sitting here wondering how I became the villain in a situation where I've been the one sacrificing for years. I tried explaining myself. I told my parents I'd already talked to them about this before, that this wasn't just about the apartment. It was about being stuck in a living situation that was supposed to be temporary, about watching my niece get to live comfortably in a space that was meant for me while I do all the heavy lifting around here. I told them I wasn't okay with her bringing people into my home without warning, especially people I've made it clear I don't want around. None of it mattered. They'd already decided I was in the wrong. I even offered compromises. I said I'd help her find a new place, that I'd give her plenty of time to move, that we could work out a timeline together. But my dad just kept saying no. He acted like I was trying to throw her out into the cold when all I wanted was what had been promised to me years ago. For the record, we both pay rent for our spaces. This isn't a situation where she's living there for free and I'm just jealous. I'm paying to live in a shared space with my parents while she has an entire floor to herself. And yes, I know I could move out. I've thought about it plenty. But I care about my parents and I don't want to leave them without help. That's why the apartment was supposed to be mine in the first place. It was supposed to be a solution that worked for everyone. Now everyone in my family is treating me like I'm some kind of troublemaker, like I'm the one who created this mess instead of the one who's been quietly dealing with it for 4 years. I'm done keeping quiet. I'm done making myself uncomfortable so everyone else can avoid an awkward conversation. If wanting my own space after all this time makes me selfish, then fine. I guess I'm selfish, but I don't think I'm wrong. My daughter had been admitted 3 days earlier after a bad bike accident left her with a broken leg and some bruising along her ribs. Nothing life-threatening but painful enough that she needed to stay for observation and pain management. She was 15, scared, and in a lot of discomfort. As her mom, I felt helpless watching her go through this. The accident happened on a Saturday afternoon when she was riding with friends. She'd hit a pothole going downhill and flipped over the handlebars. The ER doctor said she was lucky it wasn't worse. The first 2 days went smoothly enough. The nurses were professional and kind, checking on her regularly and making sure she had everything she needed. They came in every 4 hours to check her vitals and adjust her pain medication. My daughter was managing okay, though sleeping was difficult because of the pain. But on the 3rd day, we got assigned a new nurse for the evening shift. I'll call her Karen. Karen walked in during visiting hours while I was sitting by my daughter's bed. She barely acknowledged either of us, just started messing with the IV without introducing herself or explaining what she was doing. I found it odd, but didn't say anything at first. My daughter winced when Karen adjusted something too roughly. I politely asked if she could be more careful since my daughter was in a lot of pain. Karen shot me a look like I'd just insulted her entire family. She snapped back that she knew how to do her job and suggested that maybe if I wasn't hovering, my daughter wouldn't be so tense. I was taken aback. I've been nothing but polite to every staff member since we got here, and this was the first time anyone had been rude to me. But I bit my tongue. Hospital staff work hard, and I figured maybe she was just having a bad day. I decided to let it slide. Before I left, I made sure my daughter had water, and her call button was within reach. I also reminded her that the nurses should be checking on her regularly throughout the night. Visiting hours ended at 8 and I really didn't want to leave my daughter alone, but the hospital was strict about it. I kissed her forehead and promised I'd be back first thing in the morning. My daughter told me it was okay and that she'd be fine just a few more hours until morning. I left reluctantly, feeling uneasy but not knowing why. The next morning I arrived at 7 sharp. The moment I walked into my daughter's room, I knew something was wrong. She looked upset, her eyes red like she'd been crying. She was usually so tough, rarely cried even when she was in serious pain. I asked her what was wrong and if she was okay. She hesitated, then started telling me what happened after I left. Once visiting hours were over and it was just her and Karen in the room, things went downhill fast. Karen came in to give her medication around 9. But instead of the usual pain medication she'd been getting, Karen tried to give her something different. The pills were a different color and shape than what she'd been taking. When my daughter asked what it was, Karen got annoyed. My daughter explained that she just asked what the medication was because it looked different from what she'd been taking. Karen rolled her eyes and told her to stop being difficult. My daughter, being a smart kid, asked to see the chart because she wanted to make sure it was the right medication. I'd always taught her to advocate for herself and ask questions, especially in medical situations. That's when Karen really lost it. Karen told her she thought she knew better than her, mentioned she'd been doing this for years, and demanded she take the pill. My daughter refused. She told me she had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. Karen got more aggressive, trying to force the medication into her mouth. My daughter pushed her hand away and told her she wanted to wait until I came back or speak to another nurse first. That's when Karen grabbed the cup of water from the bedside table and threw it at her. My daughter said the cold water hit her right in the face and chest, soaking her hospital gown. She was shocked and scared. My daughter said she told Karen she was incompetent and that she was going to report her. That's when she hit her. My blood ran cold. I asked where she hit her. My daughter touched her cheek and I could see a faint red mark there. It wasn't a full bruise yet, but it was definitely there. She explained that Karen had slapped her and told her to shut up, then just walked out like nothing happened. My daughter said she was too scared to press the call button afterward because she didn't know if Karen would come back. She spent the rest of the night awake, anxious, and afraid. I was shaking with rage. I immediately pressed the call button and demanded to speak with whoever was in charge. Within minutes, a supervisor arrived. I explained everything my daughter told me, my voice barely steady when I tried to keep my composure. The supervisor went pale when she listened. She apologized and told me she would investigate immediately. She checked my daughter over, documented the mark on her face, and asked her detailed questions about what happened. She also checked the medication that was supposed to be given and confirmed it was wrong. My daughter was prescribed a 10 milligram dose of one medication, but Karen had tried to give her 20 milligrams of something entirely different. The supervisor explained that this could have caused serious complications given my daughter's other medications. Within the hour, security footage was being reviewed. The camera in the hallway caught Karen entering the room with the medication cup at 9:05 and leaving at 9:12 looking angry. While there wasn't a camera inside the room itself for privacy reasons, the footage was enough to back up my daughter's timeline. It also showed that Karen didn't return to check on my daughter for the rest of her shift, which violated hospital protocol. Karen was called into the supervisor's office. I don't know exactly what was said, but I heard her shouting from down the hall, denying everything and claiming my daughter was lying. But when they told her they'd already checked the medication log and found she'd tried to give my daughter the wrong dose of the wrong medication entirely, she went quiet. They also found that she'd falsified the records, marking that the medication had been given when it hadn't been. The hospital called the police. 2 officers arrived and took statements from both my daughter and me. They spoke with the supervisor and reviewed the footage. They also photographed the mark on my daughter's face and collected the hospital gown that was still damp from the water. Karen was escorted out of the building in handcuffs, still protesting and yelling about how this was all a misunderstanding. The hospital administration met with me later that day. They were mortified, apologizing repeatedly and telling me that Karen would never work there again. They also mentioned that this wasn't the first complaint against her, but it was definitely the most serious. They've been documenting smaller issues, but nothing like this. The administrator explained that there had been 3 previous complaints about Karen being rough with patients and 2 about medication errors that were caught before anyone was harmed. They offered to waive all of my daughter's hospital bills, which came to around $4,000. They also offered to cover any counseling she might need after this traumatic experience. My daughter was assigned a new nurse, someone incredibly kind who went out of her way to make sure my daughter felt safe and comfortable. Her name was actually on the original schedule but had called in sick, which is why Karen had been assigned to cover. We stayed 1 more night for observation, and I didn't leave her side for a second. The hospital gave me special permission to stay past visiting hours given what happened. A few weeks later, we got a call from the police. Karen had been formally charged with assault and medical negligence. The hospital had also launched a full investigation into her past conduct, and several other patients had reported similar issues but never followed through with formal complaints. Turned out there were at least 6 other incidents that had been swept under the rug or dismissed. We were also contacted by a lawyer representing 2 other families who wanted to file a civil suit against Karen and the hospital. We decided to join them. The case was settled 8 months later for an undisclosed amount, but it was enough to cover my daughter's college fund and then some. My daughter recovered fully from her injuries. The broken leg healed well, and physical therapy helped her get back to normal activities within 3 months. But the whole experience changed how we view hospital stays. We're more vigilant now, more willing to speak up if something doesn't feel right. My daughter keeps a detailed log whenever she has to see a doctor now, writing down everything that's said and done. And my daughter learned that trusting her instincts matters even when an authority figure tries to intimidate her. She's also become an advocate for patient rights, speaking at her school about the importance of asking questions in medical settings. Karen ended up pleading guilty to the charges. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail and lost her nursing license permanently. She also had to pay a fine of $5,000. Karen got what she deserved. The bell rang for third period and I grabbed my backpack, heading to English class. It was spring and the weather had everyone restless. Water guns had taken over the school. Every guy had one and sneak attacks happened constantly in the hallways. I kept mine in my bag, ready for whatever might come my way. Our English class had the weirdest schedule of any class I'd ever had. We'd meet for 25 minutes, then break for lunch, then come back for another 25 minutes. It split everything up and made it hard to focus on whatever Shakespeare play we were supposed to be reading. I walked through the door that day without thinking twice. Big mistake. 4 guys had positioned themselves around the room with their water pistols locked and loaded. They opened fire the second I stepped inside. Water hit me from all directions. My face, my shirt, my hair, everything got soaked. It ran down my neck and pooled in my shoes. The guys were laughing so hard they could barely stand up straight. I stood there dripping, looking like I'd jumped into a lake with all my clothes on. Our teacher sat at his desk with his head down grading papers or reading something. He didn't even look up, didn't say a single word about what just happened, didn't acknowledge that his student had just gotten completely drenched in the middle of his classroom. He just kept working like nothing was going on. I walked to my seat, leaving wet footprints across the floor. My shirt stuck to my skin and my socks made this awful squelching sound with every step. The 4 guys kept grinning and whispering to each other, clearly proud of themselves. I sat there for the next 25 minutes, cold and uncomfortable. The teacher talked about symbolism or themes or whatever the lesson was supposed to be. Every time I moved, my wet clothes made gross sounds. Water dripped from my hair onto my notebook. My jeans felt heavy and cold against my legs. The lunch bell finally rang. Everyone jumped up and headed for the cafeteria. I followed them out into the hallway but stopped around the corner. I waited until the coast was clear, then slipped back into the empty classroom. The teacher had gone to lunch too. The room sat quiet and abandoned. I walked over to his desk and looked at his chair. It was this ancient wooden thing that had probably been there for decades. The seat had 2 deep grooves worn into it from years of use. They were shaped perfectly for someone sitting down, like 2 little bowls carved into the wood, one for each side. I pulled out my water pistol and opened the refill cap. Then I poured every drop into the left groove. The water settled into that carved-out space perfectly. You couldn't see it unless you were standing right over it. I grinned and headed back out to the hallway. The water fountain was just a few doors down. I refilled my pistol completely, making sure nobody was around to see what I was doing. Then I went back into the classroom. The left side of the chair still had its little pool of water sitting there. I dumped the second full load into the right groove. Now both sides were filled. 2 perfect puddles waiting in those worn indentations, completely invisible to anyone just walking into the room. I checked to make sure everything looked normal, then headed to the cafeteria for real. I grabbed some food and sat with my friends, still damp but starting to dry out a little. Nobody suspected anything. The bell rang to end lunch. I timed my return perfectly. I caught up with the teacher in the hallway on his way back to class, started talking to him about the homework assignment, asking some question about the reading. Just normal student conversation. Anything to walk in with him. We entered the classroom together. I went straight to my seat while he headed for his desk. The four guys who'd ambushed me earlier were already there. I could see their water guns barely hidden under their desks. They kept looking at each other with these huge grins. They were planning round two. The teacher turned to face the board and started writing something. His back was to the entire class. That's when it started. Squeak, 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 squeak. The sound of water pistol triggers being pulled filled the room. Water hit me again from multiple directions. It ran down the back of my neck and soaked into my shirt. My hair got wet all over again. I was completely drenched for the second time that day. The teacher kept writing on the board, didn't turn around, didn't say anything, just completely ignored what was happening behind him. I sat there dripping again, watching water fall from my hair onto my desk. My clothes felt even heavier now with the second soaking. Then the teacher finished writing and turned around. He walked over to his desk, picked up his gradebook, and sat down in his chair. What happened next was perfect. His eyes went huge, like someone had just screamed in his ear. He made this shocked, gasping sound and jumped up so fast the chair nearly tipped over backward. His pants were completely soaked. Dark, wet patches spread across the entire back. It looked like he'd sat in a puddle. Those four guys absolutely lost it. They burst out laughing, slapping their desks, pointing, nearly falling out of their seats. They thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. The teacher's face turned bright red. He spun around and pointed at them, told them to get up right now, said they were going to the principal's office immediately. One of the guys tried to say they didn't do anything to his chair. Another one insisted they only shot water at me, not at him. The teacher said he didn't want to hear their excuses, told them to move. He grabbed the nearest kid by the arm and started pulling him toward the door. The other three got up and followed. They kept trying to explain they had nothing to do with his wet chair, kept saying they only used their water guns on me. They genuinely had no idea why his chair was soaked. The teacher dragged all four of them down the hallway. I could hear them arguing all the way to the principal's office. Their voices echoed through the corridor. I sat at my desk, still dripping, trying my best not to smile. The rest of the class looked completely confused. People whispered to each other, trying to figure out what just happened. Some of them thought the four guys had somehow gotten the teacher's chair wet. Others weren't sure. The teacher came back about 10 minutes later. His pants were still soaked. He'd tried to dry them off with paper towels in the bathroom. That just made it worse. Now he had weird, streaky patterns all across the back of his pants. He stood at the front of the class and made an announcement. Said those four students had each received a month of detention. 30 days. For something they didn't even do. I kept my expression neutral. Didn't say a word. Nobody suspected me. Why would they? I was the victim. The one who got soaked twice in the same class period. The one the teacher had completely ignored both times. I went home that afternoon with my clothes finally dried out. Nobody ever found out what really happened. The four guys served their month of detention. They complained about it for weeks. Said it wasn't fair. Said they didn't do anything to the chair. Nobody believed them. That was 50 years ago. I'm an old man now, but I still remember that day perfectly. The look on the teacher's face when he sat down. The way his eyes went wide. That shocked sound he made. The four guys laughing, thinking they'd somehow pulled off the greatest prank ever, not knowing they were about to get blamed for something they didn't do. The teacher ignoring me twice while I sat there soaked, then hauling those kids off to the principal's office while I sat there dry. Well, still wet, but you know what I mean. It was perfect timing. Perfect revenge. I'd been with the company for years when they shuffled me into a new department. The office itself was massive. One of those multi-floor buildings where you could go weeks without seeing someone from accounting. Each department got to decide their own flexi-time arrangements, and most of them took advantage of it. The rules were simple enough. Everyone had to be at their desks between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. Those were the core hours. The phone lines opened at 9 and closed at 5. As long as someone was around to answer calls during those buffer hours, management didn't care how you arranged your schedule. Living where I did meant dealing with horrendous traffic. My commute could easily balloon from 40 minutes to well over an hour and a half if I hit it at the wrong time. So I'd worked out a system years ago. I cleared it with my old manager first, naturally, but once I got the green light, I started coming in at 8 every morning and leaving at 4 on the dot. Avoided the worst of rush hour both ways. For nearly 4 years, this arrangement worked perfectly. No complaints, no issues. Everyone was happy. Then came the department transfer. The new team had a problem with me from day one. Well, not exactly day one. They didn't care until they noticed I was consistently the first one out the door at 4. Never mind that there was always phone coverage until 6 most evenings. Never mind that I was handling the early morning calls by myself. They decided it was unfair that I got to leave early when they all stayed until 5. The complaints started rolling into our department manager. He was a decent guy, really tried to find a middle ground. He offered them the same option I'd taken. He told them they could come in early and leave at 4 if they wanted. He even suggested setting up a rota so different people could leave early on different days. He bent over backwards trying to find a solution that would make everyone happy. They shot down every single suggestion. My co-workers insisted they didn't want to leave early. When the manager asked what exactly the problem was then, they explained that I shouldn't get special treatment. They said if they were staying until 5, I should too. They kept going on about team unity. Never mind that half of them regularly took 2-hour lunch breaks during the sporting season to watch matches in the conference room. Never mind that I've been covering the phone solo from 9 to 10 every single morning since I joined their team. None of that mattered. What mattered was that they felt it was unfair. My manager looked exhausted when he called me into his office. He explained that he'd tried everything, but they simply wouldn't budge on this. I asked if I could transfer to another department, maybe one that didn't mind the early leave time. He said he could arrange that, but there was something I should know first. He leaned forward and told me about an upcoming announcement. The company was relocating our office during a cost-cutting measure. The new location was going to be significantly closer to where I lived, close enough to walk actually. I felt a smile spreading across my face. I asked if he could keep pushing back on their complaints for another couple of weeks. I told him I had an idea. He agreed, looking curious but willing to trust me. I let my co-workers do for a bit longer. Let them get really worked up about it. There was a massive international sporting event happening at the time, and because it was being held overseas, the time difference meant morning matches aired while we were supposed to be working. Living in the UK but not being British myself, I had zero interest in following the local teams. But my co-workers were absolutely obsessed. They'd been coming in at 10 specifically so they could watch the morning games and still make it to the office for core hours. Finally, the department manager called a team meeting to discuss working hours. I sat back and let everyone vent. They were so passionate about fairness and team unity and how we all needed to work the same hours. One co-worker said it just wasn't right that one person got different treatment. Another agreed, saying we were a team and should all be working together. I threw in a few comments here and there, just enough to get them really fired up. When I sensed the moment was right, I held up my hands in surrender. I told them they were absolutely right. I said I'd been thinking about this all wrong. They looked surprised but pleased. I asked if they'd prefer me to work 9 to 5 instead. Enthusiastic nodding all around the table. I clarified that their main concern was me being the only one leaving early, and that they wanted us all work in the same hours. One of them confirmed that was exactly what they'd been saying. I said that was great, and suggested we should all work 9 to 5 then, starting tomorrow. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My manager jumped right in and said it was a wonderful idea. He called it a brilliant solution and announced he'd put it in place immediately. He explained we'd take the whole department off flexi time and everyone would work 9 to 5, which was what the team wanted all along. The colors started draining from faces around the table. I piped up to remind everyone that this meant I wouldn't be the only one covering the phones from 9 to 10 anymore. I mentioned what a relief that would be actually, because the phones got really busy first thing in the morning. One of my co-workers opened her mouth to object. The manager reminded them that this was exactly what they'd been requesting for weeks now. He said the whole team work in the same hours and he was just giving them what they asked for. I added that since I couldn't leave early anymore, I should probably mention I'd need to stop working through my lunch break. Otherwise, I'd be completely worn out by 5. I watched realization dawn on their faces. I've been skipping lunch regularly, using that time to cover the phones during matches. The upcoming quarterfinals and semifinals were scheduled right over the UK lunch hour. The office had arranged to show them on the big screen in the main conference room, but now they'd only have their standard 1-hour lunch break to watch. I announced that I could see now I'd been selfish, wanting to leave early. I said I was really pleased we found a way for me to fit in with everyone else. I didn't bother mentioning the payment processing I've been handling between 8 and 9 every morning. That was work they should have been splitting amongst themselves anyway. Something else I volunteered to take on to try to keep the peace. But I definitely enjoyed watching their faces when they realized they'd have extra work waiting for them bright and early at 9 the next morning. 2 weeks later, the office relocation was officially announced. Our new building was close enough to my flat that I could walk. The removal of flexi time that my co-workers had fought so hard for actually worked out perfectly in my favor. I had to work very hard not to look smug. During that announcement, they got exactly what they asked for. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.